Hello everyone, this is Jordan here bringing a topic that I already discussed back from the beginning of my channel. In fact, the earliest topic was child stars, and while I did like the video, it feels like it was outdated and it needs to change, and I did have quite a history with it. Child stars topic video was made back in May 2020, way before I joined YouTube in January 2021. When I uploaded it, I only gave it a slight change, but everything remains the same. But now, it's finally time to change once again. I call it Child Stars Revisited. From Macaulay Culkin to the Olson twins to Jaleel White to the stars from Nickelodeon Disney Channel, these child stars were popular from the late 80s to the 2010s, which that's the only decades I'm going towards. Obviously, I was born in the mid-90s. Plus, there's so many I can count by names of individuals from family shows to kids shows to movies. Let's start off with family shows. Back in the late 80s through the 90s, big cable channels like ABC made family shows, which technically wasn't for kids, but the shows had kids in them. Full House, Family Matters, Home Improvement, Sister Sister, etc. The shows had their popularity, and that's because they had child stars. In Full House, you had Candace Camembert and Jodie Sweetin, but the main stealer in the show is the Olson twins, Mary-Kate and Ashley. When the show premiered, they were babies, and they did swap them as Michelle Tanner. In the final season, season 8, they were around 8 years old, but as time went on, they were on their own show, their specials, and now they're entrepreneurs. In Family Matters, the character Steve Urkel, played by Jaleel White, he was an adult right when the show ended, so at least the creators decided to end the show. In Home Improvement, the most well-known out of the kids is none other than Jonathan Taylor Thomas, who you may know that he voiced young Simba in the animated Lion King movie. After Home Improvement ended, he does a little bit of acting, but he did stop until 2015, and here's what he looks like as of today. I will say, these 90s family shows was almost turning into a nosedive. Shows was leaning towards crime shows, drama shows, and comedy shows that contained non-family ones during then. If you take the cable channels with family shows aside, the 90s and the 2000s had kids channels. Enter Nickelodeon and Disney Channel. Nickelodeon was the popular one in the 90s with their cartoons, but I'm only focusing on their live action shows, in which they were the ones in the mid-90s, like Clarissa Explains It All, which stars Melissa Joan Hart, who later on was in Sabrina the Teenage Witch in 1996. However, all that and Kenan and Kel were huge in the 90s, mainly because of the creator Dan Schneider, which I'll get to him in a second. Disney Channel started making their live action shows in the 2000s, and boy was there a lot. By the late 2000s and the 2010s, Nickelodeon and Disney Channel had so many of them. It was like a swarm of mosquitoes, and you gotta remember, it was part of the competition. The stars in both channels in these years were a lot. If you grew up with these channels, you know who they are. Anyways, there were things to realize before, like Raven-Symoné. She was young when she was in The Cosby Show. Then she appeared in a few movies like Dr. Dolittle. Then in 2003, Disney Channel made her show, That's So Raven, and ran for 4 years. Then in 2017, they made another show as a spin-off. Raven-Symoné is the oldest Disney Channel star. How about Nickelodeon stars? The cast from all that are the oldest, like Kel Mitchell, Josh Server, Lori Beth Denberg, etc. In fact, all that had its run since they brought it back in 2019 as a revival. However, the revival ended in late 2020, at the time which I didn't know until I uploaded the original video. Going back to what I was mentioning, Dan Schneider, this guy has made Nickelodeon shows from the 90s up until the 2010s, and then he exited back in 2018, in which, yeah, everybody knows that he is a creep, in which the documentary explains it. His two last shows are Game Shakers and Henry Danger, in which, yeah, I can understand the downfall from that. He does create, wrote, and produce shows that people like. Plus, there are some live-action Nickelodeon shows that are not made by Dan Schneider, which, again, competing with Disney Channel live-action shows. Let's move on to movies. I mainly focus on child stars from the 90s through today. The most famous one is Macaulay Culkin. He starred in films like Uncle Buck, My Girl, and the box office hit of 1990, Home Alone. He was definitely one of the famous child stars from the 90s, until his later films were starting to wear off, which I'll explain that in a second. Some of the child stars are almost well known, like Elijah Wood. Some of his films are not quite famous, but his starring role later on was the famous movie series Lord of the Rings, playing as Frodo. Now another good child star is Haley Joel Osment. His famous role is in the 1999 film The Sixth Sense, where his famous line, "I see dead people," came from. Before that, his first film debut was Forrest Gump in 1994. Like with Macaulay Culkin, Haley Joel Osment was pretty famous. In fact, he got nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. After the years, Haley still acts here and there, even some 90s child stars that may or may not know some, like Christina Ricci. Her famous roles were The Addams Family, Casper, Now and Then, etc. But at the time the 90s was ending, she was getting older, but she does act. As the new decade 2000s arrived, new child stars come in. Some are famous like the triples from Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, and Rupert Grint. The franchise started in 2001 and ended in 2011 on the 10-year mark, which understandably because the three were getting older. The Fanning sisters is a pretty good example. Millie Dakota, the oldest sister, has been in other films, while her younger sister Ella has appeared in later ones. Heck, they even voiced together in an English dub of My Neighbor Totoro. Another famous one is Abigail Breslin, similar to Haley Joel Osment in a way, but she got Oscar nominated for Best Supporting Actress for Little Miss Sunshine. Then by the time she was a teenager, she was in Zombieland, then a sequel 10 years after the first one. As far as other child stars go, some are serviceably fine, depends on their acting or their movie itself, and some films I grew up watching, like Cheaper by a Dozen, which I already did my review. Even Lindsay Lohan, she's appeared in other Disney films and then quickly appeared in a famous teen movie, Mean Girls. Technically, I would put Anne Hathaway on the list. I mean, she was new in the 2000s and her first film debut was in The Princess Diaries, but she was 18 in an adult age. Live action TV shows in 2010s were starting to phase in and phase out, which, yeah, you could say child stars that appeared in the middle to late 2000s are teenagers and not quite close to adults. There were some new ones that came out in the 2010s, like Ariana Grande. She didn't start appearing until 2010 when Victorious came out. Then she reprised her role as Kat in another show, Sam and Cat. After the cancellation, she decided to be a singer, and still is as of today. Just can't wait for her role in the upcoming Wicked movie. Even some appear before the main characters of the show, like Good Luck Charlie. For example, Bridget Miller and Jason Dolley have appeared before the show came out. By the 2010s, previous child stars are now adults. Then new ones come in, mainly because some of the child stars were born in late 90s and early 2000s, which understandably because the ones you know, like Miley, Selena, the Sprouse twins, and so forth, were getting older. Now the child stars born in late 90s to 2000s are getting older too, as of now. By the time they get older, they started to decline, like quitting and many others. Macaulay Culkin took a break from acting in the mid-90s, and it shows. Not only that, but he was a teenager. He went to private high school in Manhattan. Jake Lloyd from Jingle All the Way and Star Wars The Phantom Menace was arrested, which is nothing new from child stars. Arresting and drug addiction are the main cause outside of acting, and clearly we don't want to see child stars going through tougher times. Even Amanda Bynes, which she was acting good in the 2000s, her final film role was Easy A in 2010, and then she stopped acting. She even said that she's been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Even the Olson twins stopped acting too. They focus on their fashion careers. Even significant memory loss. Actor Frankie Muniz, who you may know in the 2000s show Malcolm in the Middle, he said years ago he had it and he forgot that he starred in his own show / movies. That's pretty sad. Either way, child stars, old or new, are mainly grown up, obviously. Some still act like Raven in the spin-off show Raven's Home, Candace, Jodie, and Andrea in Fuller House, and some old cast from the All That reboot. Even bringing back the iCarly show as a reboot until its cancellation in 2023. But then new child stars come in and perform acting in a show or a movie, even fresh original shows with new child stars like Stranger Things. Yeah, the show is technically not for kids, it's more towards teens and up, but it has kids in the show. But I will say, in the first season they were young, and since season 5 is the final season, they are now adults. You see what I mean? Though the show had trouble production during the time, like that virus and even the SAG-AFTRA strike in 2023. And while I did say Nickelodeon and Disney Channel are putting up new live action shows, they still are, but I'm seeing them less as of now. Is it because those two incidents I just mentioned? I'm not sure. I know cable is dying and streaming services all over the place, but back to child stars. I mentioned the old video about Mia Tellerico. She was a baby when Good Luck Charlie came out, but by 2014 the show ended, and to this day there hasn't been a new show for her, and sadly there won't be a Good Luck Charlie revival show, well, because Bridget Miller moved on to something else. Plus, Mia Tellerico is almost turning 16 pretty soon. Yeah, not quite close to 18, but man, I'm getting old. Speaking of that, I wanted to mention a few child stars that I'm congratulating them for about less than a year it happened. Bridget Miller is now a CEO for the space startup, Miley Cyrus receiving the Disney Legend, Macaulay Culkin for the Hollywood Walk of Fame, Lindsay Lohan returning for a Freakier Friday sequel, and Selena Gomez and David Henry are working on the show Wizards Beyond Waverly Place, a revival of the original show similar to Raven's Home. I'm happy that they're doing good. As far as others out there, I'm sure they're doing okay. And while I already discussed before, I'm sure Hilary Duff moved on to something else despite the cancellation of the Lizzie McGuire revival. Another child star I want to mention that I glossed in the original video was Jenna Ortega. At the time, she was in the Disney Channel show Stuck in the Middle, but then in 2022, she began her breakthrough career, starring in the Scream sequels and being the main lead in the Netflix series Wednesday, and then recently she's in Beetlejuice. But yeah, I want to see what Ortega is gonna do in the upcoming years. As far as others that stopped acting, I'm sure they will be fine too. Like Jeanette McCurdy did a book about her career. Even if they're not acting, you can find them on social media, or better yet, the Where Are They Now videos are available from Watch Mojo and Miss Mojo. No matter how old the child stars were, it's good to see them grow up and become a love letter to the ones we grew up with. And let's just see what the future lies ahead for them. So yeah, that is my updated child stars topic video. I'm not going to make a new one anymore. This is a video I wanted to do for a retake, and I wanted to do it for the 500 subs special. Take care everyone, and I will be making a new topic video by the end of the year that you all have been waiting for. See you all later.